Welcome to the new episode. This is going to be a power rankings updated for the 2027 season. I thought it'd be fun to kind of update this every year and just kind of see the changes that happen year to year with players. And I know some of the lists will be pretty similar, so I thought I'd go through it all. And I did it all in one big whip. I spent a few hours this morning and update all the positions. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I might have missed a player or two with injuries. I wasn't super thorough with that, but for the most part, I think I got everybody. All the guys on the list that you'll see that have red are going to be new additions from last year. So, anyways, if you look at last year's list, pitching wise, I can show you on the other screen here. Last year's pitching list overall was right here. So we have Shane Bieber was number 1, Nate Pearson was number 2, Kyle Wright was number 3, Flaherty, Brady. So you got all those Pittsburgh guys in the top there, and Massey and Esqueda, Soroka, Syndergaard. So we have a pretty pretty nasty list there of talented guys. Most of those guys are still on the list this year with a few changes. So I will start at the bottom of the list and kind of go upwards from, that was last year's list. So I got a new updated list for this year. I will hold the anticipation. So I added quite a few names. I didn't feel super comfortable leaving it only 20 because I thought there was a ton of pitchers bunched in from the mark right from about, let's see here, 12 right through 30 or so, right through 28, 30, were very closely bunched, and then I added about 6 or 7 at the end, so I'll go over those guys really fast at the end here. So last on the list, I have Fransico Crispin at number 37. I thought he deserved to be on the list. I think he'll be quite a bit higher in the next few years. I just didn't feel comfortable fitting him any higher than this with how many good pitchers there are, but I think he's definitely going to be a top 30 guy pretty soon here. Next up, we have Cintron. I thought he should be rewarded for a great season. Really high movement guy, gets kind of rewarded with high WAR totals in Rocky Stadium, even though he doesn't have very good peripherals and lets up a ton of hits. Guys only hit 248 off him and Coors. When you limit home runs, guys hit 248. That's pretty special. So I thought he might be on that list. Pretty hard to leave a 4.5 WAR guy off, have many lower than 36, so I thought that was a good spot for him. Next up, we have Poppen. Sean Poppen probably could be a little bit higher in this list, but he hasn't really produced super well for a while. He hasn't had over a 3 WAR season since 2024. He was really elite back then, but I thought with the injuries and kind of a mediocre season this year, he probably it was a good spot for him at number 35. Number 34 is JT Jin. JT Jin has a pretty nasty profile. I thought he should be rewarded for a couple consistent seasons in a row. He's a young guy that has 4 WAR last year. He's on pace for 3 WAR this year. Guy is pretty solid. He's Texas's best pitcher. They were like one of the best pitching teams in baseball last year. So I thought kind of throw him on the list here. He has had quite a bit of problems with home runs this year, which makes sense with his lower movement. But I thought he could. He's one of those guys that can kind of consistently give you 2.5 to 4 WAR seasons, so I thought that was a good spot for him. Next up, we have McCullers. Lance McCullers, I had off the list last year. I didn't have him in my top 20. McCullers has been a pretty solid addition this year. I just figured he's another one of those guys that's always a consistent, like number 2, 3 pitcher, maybe even a little bit better. It's having a pretty decent season this year. 3.9 FIP isn't fantastic, but it's solid. He is on this list, just a really talented dude. I think he's probably even a little better than his stats indicate. He's had a couple of rough starts in the last few starts he's had. So, guy that has a 3.3 ERA, doesn't walk a ton of guys, pretty explosive arm, pretty solid pitcher overall. Michael Baird. Baird is number 32 on the list. He had a really good season last year. He's consistently been Washington's best pitcher for a while now. Really cool scouting discovery. I love him. Next up, we have Jack Sellinger. Jack Sellinger's number 31. Jack Sellinger is having a fantastic season. I just thought he was getting rewarded a little bit for an elite defense in Colorado. Only walking 3.3% of guys is pretty fantastic, and the strikeouts are really high. So it actually could be a little bit higher in this list, but I didn't think he was really that much better than the guys above him, as we'll see here when we go through these. Most of the guys above him are aces once you get to the top 20, 25 here. So I thought I had a tough time kind of figuring out where to put him if I moved him up too much. You probably could have him a few spots higher, though. He played pretty fantastic this year, but the FIP's only 4.2. I think, like I said, I think he's defense is kind of rewarding him a little more statistically than the stat show, but who knows? I could be wrong. The hits are a little high. That's what's kind of high, 8.4, but it's not too bad for Coors. Really solid young pitcher, though, for sure. Next up, we have Zach Maxwell. Zach Maxwell has all the makings of a top 10 player in this list in a few seasons. Very young, only pitched a little bit in the majors last couple seasons. Hasn't done a ton yet until this season. He's on pace for 3.3 WAR. I think he's a guy that I threw on here that definitely has the potential to be an elite pitcher if he gets close to that 70 stuff. I think he's could even be as high as top 5 on this list pretty soon here. So guy that to really keep an eye on, pretty elite talent. Next up we have COL Quantrill. COL Quantrill I have in this list, number 29 at Boston. Quantrill is nasty. He's been really dominant. He should have been probably higher in this last few lists, but this year he's played a little bit not quite as good as he has the last couple of years. His FIP was 2.4, 3.5, and this year's up to 3.8. Pretty much just not striking out quite as many guys, and the walks are a little bit up. Everything else pretty solid, though. Guys are only hitting 230 off him. Really solid pitcher. Just hasn't been quite as dominant as he has in the last few years, so he fell a few spots on the list to high 20s, but still really good and would be the best pitcher on a bunch of teams in baseball. Next up, we have Blake Snell. Blake Snell, unfortunately, just had a huge injury at the age of 34. So this might be starting to be the end of Blake Snell. He might be not pitching till the end of his 35, almost 36-year-old season. So we might never see that dominant pitcher again, but I thought I'd reward him for what he's done the last few years. He had a 5.4 WAR season. Guys only hit 220 off an elite 230 innings for the Dodgers. Almost won Cy Young that year. Then 2026, played on 2 teams here. Had a combined 3.7 WAR. A really, really solid season, both places there. WHIP was 1.1, 1.4. And then this season in St. Louis, he had 3.8 WHIP, FIP. Guys are hitting 245 off him. Striking out a ton of guys, almost 25% of guys, one of the better lefties in baseball. So unfortunately, big injury for him, but I thought he was good enough to rank in the top 28 here. Oh, I got the wrong team for him. 1 second. All right, next up we have Mackenzie Gore. Gore is finally starting to live up to the expectations. Gore has had an interesting career. He started off really hot, and then he kind of got worse and worse each season from 2022 to 2025. And then had another bad year in 2026, but then he really bounced back this year and looks like as good as he has since 2022. Is on pace for 5 WAR, which would be his best season ever at the age of 28. Another lefty. I think lefty-wise, he is number he's about number 5 on this list as the 5th best lefty in baseball on my list. So he's going to be really nasty. If he keeps pitching like this, I think he could even be higher next year. Like I said, the ratings finally always kind of have shown this type of pitcher, but he's kind of underproduced quite a bit for whatever reasons, even though he's in a pretty good pitcher's park. So that's nice to see finally him break out at the age, still only 28, so he still could have 4 or 5 really top-notch years. Really nice to see that. Next up, we have Cedillo. Cedillo is our first on this list, so our first really high draft pick, a young guy on this list. He's been really nasty. He was the 9th overall pick. A prospect that had a crazy TCR right before the draft a couple of years ago. And now, as you can see, when he first came into the game, he was 50, 55, and 50 ratings. Now he's up to 65 and 70 control and stuff. Really elite fastball. Throws 100 miles an hour. Explosive 3-pitch guy that has 22% strikeout rate. Guys are hitting 250 off him. Could be another one of those guys that if he could hold the home runs down with that low movement, which probably helps playing in St. Louis, he could probably produce some really, really high level seasons. Kind of has the same ratings as like Gerrit Cole, who's on pace for like 6 WAR. Just 1 less pitch. I don't really count a 25-30 as a pitch, but 3.5 pitches, whatever you want to call that. Really, really nasty skill set, though. I think yet another young guy that could be up on this list in a few years here. Next up, we have Jim Spaur, whatever you want to call it, some weird nickname. This guy is unbelievable. He's the number 1 prospect in baseball shortly ago, and he is striking out 28% of guys, which is as high as anyone for starting pitchers. The walks are a tad high, but they're not terrible. 60 control potential, so he's still quite a ways away from his control potential. So if he can reach his ceiling, this guy is a top 10 pitcher in baseball potential, just because how he's a lefty with one of the best fastballs in baseball. Could strike out almost 30% of guys when he reaches his peak. Just a super, super, super cool talent. He was a 20 changeup guy when he came into the league as a prospect. He was a relief pitcher, and then he just kept going up like crazy, and his changeup went from like a 20-50 to he was like a 20-35 or something. It was like super low, and then it just kept going up and up, and so it's 50. So anyone, if you're ever thinking, I know it's rare for those crazy low changeups to get really good, but it does happen sometimes. Spaur is a freak. Next up at number 24, we have Jay Groome. Jay Groome is a beast for Boston. He's a super elite I think he's the number 5 actually lefty in the league on my list. Just super talented, 80 curveball, a joy to watch. Finesse guy, power lefty with the stuff. I mean, and just has a crazy 207 opponent batting average against him this year. His FIP's a tad high, but he's just his walks have been a little higher than they should be. But he's just got an explosive skill set, so I thought he deserved to be out there. A guy at number 23 on this list that was a lot higher last year, Soroka. Soroka isn't quite the strikeout guy he was. He's lost just a tad bit of stuff, but his velocity's still there. Still a really nasty overall pitcher. On pace for 3 WAR, but just not quite that 6 WAR guy he was last year. He's also fragile now, and he's letting up pretty much the same as he was last year. His batting average opponents almost exact same. Just the on-base percentage is a tad higher. Everything's about the same. The home runs, the walk percentage is up about 1.5. Other than that, just not doing quite as many innings either, but just has a really nice profile. Still one of the better pitchers in baseball, even though he's getting up there in years. At 29 years old, he's just always, like, he feels older than he is. I guess 29 is not that old, but it just feels like I always have that weird feeling he's going to regress when I start to see that stuff go down. But it could just be just a minor one. But I don't know. Something about him, I think I probably overestimated his downfall. I was seeing this red, and I was thinking that was more recent, but I probably should have had him a little bit higher in this list. Pretty elite pitcher, probably a little bit too low at 23 here. Probably could be in the top 15 for sure. Next up, we have Tony Locey. Locey is number 22 in this list. He has 5 insane pitches, explosive stuff, striking out 25% of guys. The walk percentage is pretty good. Another guy that could be a little higher. This guy, I wouldn't be surprised he was like 10 or 12 in this list next year. Just a really talented dude that just the home runs are a little bit high. That's the only thing. But if he could lower those home runs, he's going to be a lot higher in this list. A super talented dude. Crazy progression over the years. Started as like a 35 control guy with only 50 stuff. Now he's at 70 stuff. So just a guy that's just gotten better and better over the years and kept progressing. Turned into one of the better pitchers in baseball. Next up is his teammate. I didn't know who to rank higher between these two guys. The St. Louis Cardinals. Jose Vasquez is a lefty. So I bumped him up one spot because they were pretty close. So I figured I'd go with the lefty here. Doesn't really matter though. But 3 super talented pitches. Really good fastball, 98 miles an hour, and has a super high hold rating. Really nice control. Only walking 5% of guys back-to-back years. Guys are only hitting 214 off this year. Last year he had almost 4 WAR, and then this year is coming back, and guys are hitting even less off him. Just everything about his profile screams really big stud for a long time at 24 years old. Lefty, back-to-back seasons of 4 WAR progression. Just keeps getting better. Just a really nasty player. I love his skill set. Really nice pickup in the trade there from Pittsburgh. Next up, we have Oscar Soto. Soto probably could have been a little bit higher in this list, but there was just some really talented dudes above him. So it seems a little low to have last year's Cy Young winner at number 20, but the guy is just... the guy's just not having quite the dominant season he did last year. Maybe a little bit because of Grandal's regression. Really just got a little lucky last year with the 0.6 home runs per 9. His movement's only 50, and he led the league in that. So it's probably, and then went kind of the opposite way this year, over double the amount of home runs projected at 1.4, but still really solid. He's actually gotten a little bit better in his control. So really it's just the exact same season as last year, but the home runs are way up. But he's still on pace for like 4 WAR. But yeah, another guy that's like a legitimate ace type pitcher, would be the number 1 pitcher in about half the teams in baseball, at least. Just an elite talent. So interesting to see if he can start to neuter those home runs a little bit and get back up, be a top 5 or 10 player in this list again. He's got all the skills for that, for sure. John Pittman is a guy that is going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long time. Another young guy at 24 years old, has incredible movement. Is only letting up. Actually, his home runs are up since last I looked. But yeah, one still pretty good, but it could be even higher than that with that elite movement. Surprised it's even that high. Guys are hitting 240 off him. He's got pretty nice strikeout and walk ratios. Just another guy that's pretty good. Probably he's playing a little bit below his talent level. I was expecting to put him in the top 10. I was thinking he was playing a little bit better until I looked closer. I think this guy should be in the top 5 for a few years coming up here if he can start to play just a tad better. He's got all the talent in the world, but still, even with that, he's still a top 20 player for sure. Next up, we have the San Francisco Giants pitcher. I'm not going to try and say that first name. Teng. Teng has one of the best changeups, one of the best pitches in baseball. He's a guy that's just been really good for years now. 3.3 WAR, 5.5. This year's on pace for over 4, almost 5 again. The home runs are up a tad from last year, but everything else is about the same. Got really nasty strikeout. 27% super high, so it's even higher than it was last year in his 5.5 WAR season. So on pace for 200 innings yet again. The FIP's always in the 3s. Just in a really, really amazing talent. That's just a super consistent pitcher. Been a huge reason that San Francisco Giants have just turned into one of the better teams of baseball the last few years. No coincidence there. Next up, we have Kumar Rocker. Rocker is up to number 17 on this list. Rocker is a stud in Baltimore. They have 3 pitchers on this list already. So we had Spaur and then Crispin and Rocker. So that's a nasty trio. They got Rocker is the best of the bunch currently. I think both those guys has potential to be as good as Rocker, Spaur especially. But Rocker right now is the best of the 3. He's the oldest. And he's just been really consistent. Just almost the same... pretty much the same as what I just said for Tang, for saying the Giants there, the last pick. Just the same idea where he's just been really consistent. Both guys had 3.5 and 5 WAR the last 2 seasons, Tang and Rocker, and then both guys are on pace for about 4 this year. So just really similar to what I said the player before. He's just got an awesome 3-pitch mix. Just a super, super talented dude. Next up, we have Karl Hartman, 1 spot ahead. I thought he deserved it. He had a Cy Young award, so that was kind of what was the tiebreaker there for me with him and Rocker. And also, he's having a better season this year. He had a down year last year, but the Cy Young season the year before and then this year, both dominant seasons, 3.1 and 3.2 FIPS for those 2 seasons. The walk rate is down again, back to 3.9. Strikeout rate's the highest it's been. The hits are a little bit high. That's the only concerning thing. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, but he does let up a few too many base hits compared to some of the other top talents on this list. A lot of the other guys have like higher stuff in the top 20 here, so that's the only difference between him and those guys above him. He doesn't quite have that explosive strikeout ratio stuff, but it is at 22, which is pretty high, but it is only 55, and he is letting up a few more hits than those guys. Doesn't suppress contact quite as much, so the BAPIP's a tad high too. So yeah, he's a really, really nice, consistent. Anyone with that high controlled movement's always just going to be consistent and just give you like really nice seasons. So I was surprised it was as bad as it was last year, even though it was still not terrible, but definitely more the player that he's been this year than last year for sure. Really, really good talent. Could win another Cy Young there, who knows. Noah Syndergaard is up next. Syndergaard is a freak. He's having a little bit of a down year this year compared to the last few seasons. He had 4.4 and 4.4 WAR back to back. This year's on pace for just under 3. The FIP's gone up quite a bit. It was at 3.1 the last 2 years, and then this year's at 4.1, so it's up about 25%. Just not terrible. It's just really the home runs. It's just a luck thing sometimes. The movement hasn't gotten worse, so it's probably just a little bit of luck. The walk rate is still at 4%, which is elite. The strikeout rate is down a bit, even though he hasn't really lost any velocity or stuff ratings. But he should bounce back in the second half and play even better than this. He's a guy that could be top 10 on this list, just having a little bit of a down year, so he's down at number 15. Eddie Billings actually got the jump over Syndergaard to 1 spot above. Just love the season he was having. His whip's .99. Incredible. I think the first guy under 1 whip so far. The guys are only hitting 200 off him. He's striking up 24% of guys. The home runs are pretty good. The walks are pretty good. Just a crazy good profile. Absolutely love his skill set. He is one of the better young pitchers in baseball. He's 26 years old, a former top 10 pick, 3.6 FIP. Him and a couple of young pitchers on Cleveland there are going to be really good. Tanner Witt especially. And Billings is going to be a nasty combo. I really like Billings. I thought he deserved to be this high on the list. On pace for almost 5 WAR. Next up, we have Chris Sale. Chris Sale is a really nasty lefty. He's number 3 lefty on this list. Been super talented, super good for super long amount of time. He has never really had a bad season this entire TLG. He just had that injury early on, and every season since he's been about 3 or 4 WAR. Always, Tyler's done a good job protecting his innings. His WAR totals would be higher if he pitched more, but he likes to keep them fresh, and he's always got such a big lead in that AL East. He lets him have some innings off and doesn't pump him too hard in the regular season, or else he would be closer to that 5 WAR guy. Just a really nasty guy, and the crazy thing about him is he actually got a big velocity jump. His velocity went up. Sorry, not velocity jump, his stuff rating. His stuff rating went up 10 this February, and you can see it too in his strikeout numbers. He's up to 28%. He was at 24% last year, so he's up almost 5%. Just incredible, the explosive. So he lost a little bit of movement. but then, yeah, his stuff went up. So it was really interesting to have a guy at that age have that kind of stuff jump. I don't know what exactly happened. At his pitch ratings, I thought stayed the same, but for whatever reason, just a weird TCR or something like that. But really, really cool to see a guy at that age still producing at an elite level. Just a freak. Speaking of an older guy, we have Shane Bieber. Shane Bieber was number 1 pitcher on this entire list last season. Bieber is coming in at number 12 this year because of the injury that bumped him down quite a bit and his age. I didn't feel super good about having him above some of these elite players on this list that are producing 4 and 5 WAR seasons this year. And I know he's done it for a long amount of time, but I just thought it was a good spot to have him because I think at this age, coming off a major arm injury, who knows? But he also probably has the potential to be number 2 or 3 on this list. He's got a crazy career so far in TLG. It's been insane every single season, and he could bounce back and have 5 or 6 WAR and get his spot back in the top 7 or 8, depending if he can recover without any regression from that injury. Just a awesome overall profile, but because of the injury there, he's down a little bit this season. One spot above him was Anthony Susac. I probably should have given Bieber, the veteran, a nod over Susac here, but I thought it doesn't really matter. So Susac at number 11 has turned into a legitimate ace pitcher. He's had some dominant performances this season. I can't believe I traded him. I won a World Series with Lindor, so again, I don't really regret it too much, but really need a shortstop. But really stings to give up a guy like this. 24 years old. He had really good seasons last couple of years as a young fella. 3.9 FIP, 4.5, and is down to 3.4 this year, so you can see the jump he's made. The main reason is home runs are way down. The movement's gone all the way up to 65, and you can see it. The home runs are down to 0.6 per 9. Guys are hitting 240 off him in Coors, which is pretty low. That would probably be closer to 200 in a normal stadium. And the guy's just not – he has no weak spot, really. He's just good at everything. Just an amazing overall player that's going to be a top-notch pitcher for the next decade, probably, if he doesn't have any bad injuries. Just an absolute freak. Sandy Gaston is 1 spot above. I had him above Susac just because of the reason I just thought his stuff was so explosive. They're both really good. Susac is probably just good, if not better, than Gaston at the moment. But just something about Gaston's profile being at 101 miles an hour, 70 stuff, and an 80 fastball just gets me so excited. The strikeout rate is just so crazy, and he's limiting home runs quite a bit. His walk rate's at 6.6%. Guys are hitting 220 off him. So those two guys are ranked really closely, both 24 and 25 years old. Gaston and Susac, just both NL West guys are going to be battling out for years as top pitchers, both on really good teams. So just a really exciting rivalry, I think, that's going to happen between those two. Both guys really similar profiles there, so they're ranked back to back, which I thought was cool. Now that we're in the top 10, so number 9 is Gerrit Cole. Gerrit Cole is an absolute freak. He's having a bounce back season. He's had a couple down years. He was pretty bad with some bad catcher play and defense in Atlanta, and then this season they went out, really improved center field and shortstop and catcher defense, the 3 most important spots up the middle of the diamond, and it is showing big time with Gerrit Cole. It's helped him out quite a bit. The main reason is the home runs are way down, so it's the defense probably hasn't changed a ton actually when it comes to the overall batting average against and all that, but as you can see, the FIP, because of the home runs being down so far, the FIP's got all the way back down to 3.2. So at 36 years old, kind of like Sale, just ageless wonder there. Both guys got a really similar profile. Chris Sale and Cole both have like the 65 control and stuff with the lower movement. Gerrit Cole just been phenomenal, on pace for 5.7 WAR, so he's right in the Cy Young running. Really cool to see him bounce back, because he hasn't really been a great pitcher since 2023 is when he last had a really big time year. Was okay last year, but every other year he's had some injuries and some other down performances, so really cool to see him get an elite catcher, Danny Jansen, and really help his stats out and kind of live up to his potential. Still got really nasty overall profile. Now we're into the nitty-gritty. Top 8, Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty is a freak. Jack Flaherty has 65 stuff, 70 control. As you can see, he lives up to that. The reason he's not even higher in this list is because the home runs. Profile statistically, he probably would be a top 3 or top 5 guy, but I bumped him down quite a bit because he's letting up a ton of home runs this year, as you can see with his FIP being quite a bit lower. The guy's really dominant pitcher this entire time in TLG. He's on pace for a Hall of Fame type career if he can have a couple more good seasons of 4 or 5 WAR. This year, Pittsburgh, he's letting up a few too many home runs, which is why he's not in the top 5, but still at number 8, so one of the best pitchers in baseball. Isaac Esqueda. Esqueda is a freak. Esqueda is the number 2 lefty in all of baseball on my list right here. This guy has one of the best profiles you'll see from a movement control standpoint. He's kind of got like the Soroka profile, where he's just got that nice 50-55 stuff with that elite movement control. And he has just been a freak. The last 3 years, he's probably got some of the highest combined WAR in baseball with 4.64 and on pace for 5 WAR this season. The whips are so low, the FIP's so low, the walk rate's so low. He's striking out 23% of guys, which is nasty for only having 55 stuff and 91 miles per hour. Just doesn't really walk anybody and has so many pitches. That strikeout rate is really high. So just an amazing, amazing profile. Most guys 55 stuff and 91 miles per hour. It'll probably only strike out like 15-16% of guys. So as you can see, those other things being so good kind of play his stuff up a little bit. Just an amazing player, one of the better players in baseball. Morejon is the number 1 lefty on this list. I have 1 spot above Esqueda. Both guys were ranked pretty closely at 7 and 6. I thought Morejon deserved to be 1 spot higher just because he had a little bit more explosive stuff. I know I was just talking about Esqueda kind of outperforms the stuff rating, but Morejon's on a different level there with the 26% strikeout rate. Also has a really elite control, really good movement, 3 really elite pitches, 99 miles per hour. Just has everything you look for in a pitcher. The home runs are a bit high because he plays in Cincy. If he's anywhere else, that'd probably be 0.9 or 1.0. It'd probably be even better. So guy is just an elite talent. That's don't have to talk a lot about these top guys. Everyone knows how good they are. So Morejon at number 6, Nate Pearson at number 5. Pearson's even more stuff than Morejon, kind of similar profiles, but even more explosive arm. The best strikeout pitcher in all baseball as a starter with 31%. Every year he's right around 30%. Just an absolute freak. He had 5 WAR season last year. He's on pace for 5.4 this season. 2 incredible pitches, and just every single season of TLG, he's just been a monster. Definitely deserving of top 10 in this list pretty much every single season. Next up, we have Matt Manning. Matt Manning has been rewarded for an incredible season. Couldn't have many lower based on the fact he's on pace for almost 7 WAR. The guy is limiting the home runs like crazy. His FIP is 2.8 for a starter. That's just ridiculous. The batting average is pretty low against. The strikeouts are really high at 28%. The home runs are down and the walks are pretty solid. It's just an incredible season, incredible pitcher, monster free agent pickup, living up to that big contract he signed. He's only getting paid $20 million this year, $35 next year. He's definitely earned that with his incredible play. So just a big time addition for Washington. Next up, we have Louis Patino. Louis Patino is a freak. He's kind of quietly put together a monster career in San Diego. Haven't really had any postseason success since 2022. And he had that Cy Young early on, which is really cool. So he's only 27 years old, already has a pretty ridiculous career with Cy Young under his belt and 30 career WAR pretty much. The guy just limits the home runs so much, and his stuff and K rates are pretty solid too. But really, it's just all about that movement rating. So being a ground ball guy with 100 miles an hour, elite slider, and that kind of movement every single year, he's consistent because he just does not let up home runs. It's 0.5, 0.3, and 0.4. Just a freak, just an absolute freak. So because of that, he's an elite top 3 pitcher in baseball. So number 3 on this list. Number 2 is JP Massey. JP Massey is turned into, in my opinion, the second best pitcher in baseball. The guy strikes out almost 30% of batters, but he also limits the walks to 5.6%. He has good movements. The home runs are down. Guys can barely hit off him. They hit 218. The FIP is super low, and everything about his profile. The BABIP's only 280. He has the best changeup and screwball that's in baseball, pretty much right up there. Pretty solid 4-pitch mix too. Those 2 elite pitches are really cool though. Having an 80 changeup and 75 screw is like such a cool combination. Just an incredible story as an 18th round pick, turning into a Cy Young front runner every single season, probably for the next little while. Him and Soto and Pittman and a bunch of those young pitchers in the AL are really exciting. So that should be big time Cy Young races every single season if all those guys can stay healthy, and a couple other big names like Eddie Billings and stuff. So really excited to see some of those young star pitchers in the AL now. Tilt the scales a little bit because all the best pitchers in the NL for a long time. So now we get some of those big time young arms in the AL start to balance it out a little bit. Kyle Wright is number 1 on this list. Kyle Wright has turned into an elite player. He's been really good for a couple years. Been, I think, number 3 or 4 on my list last year. He jumped all the way to number 1 this season. The guy is just incredible. He's the best WAR rating in the league this year by quite a bit. He's the front runner for the Cy Young right now in the NL. The guy's striking out 27%, walking 4%. and the batting average is only 240 against him. But what it really is how limited those home runs are. And Coors at 0.7 is just so elite with that high movement. The whip is so low. The FIP's 2.7. He eats innings. He's a ground ball guy. He has 4 pitches. He has top-notch stuff, top-notch control, just every single thing about that profile. He even went to Vandy, big baseball school, but it just screams superstar, and he is well worth the $30 million a year he makes. The guy is, in my opinion, the best pitcher right now in TLG, and wasn't really too close. I think I didn't even really consider putting Massey or Patino above him. I think Wright is just a surefire number 1 at this point. So that is my list. As you can see on the right side of the screen, that is the overall. I won't peek at you and show you the relief pitchers. That'll be next episode, but that is the list right there. So you got all the yellow is the guys that are left-handed pitchers, and the red is guys that are new additions to this list from last year. So the guys, a bunch of new additions, which is cool. A bunch of young guys, Cintron, Ginn, Maxwell, all guys kind of like in their mid-20s there. You get Gaston jumping all the way in the top 10 for not even on the list last year. He was injured last year. He had a big TCR a couple of years ago. He finally proved it this year, so he's all the way up in the top 10. But going over that list, pretty exciting. Like I said, there's a couple of young stars I think could be right in the top 10 next year if they live up to their ratings, like Jim Spaur, probably Billings, Pittman are probably all top 10 guys next year, which will be interesting. The top 10's not too old, though. I don't expect too many of these guys to fall out anytime soon. The big faller was Albert Abreu. Abreu has lost a lot of ratings, and he fell right down. I don't think he's a top 30 guy anymore. Unfortunately, he lost most of his control. Still has a decent profile, but definitely not the elite guy. He was like top 5 in this list last year, so that was the one big change. Other than that, though, it's really fun putting this list together, seeing all the improvement from some of those young guys and how many big new names are on the list. So that's it for this episode. Cheers.